Start in the Horn of Africa, where Western commercial oil exploration in disputed parts of the Horn of African country of Somalia could cause discrepancies over which authorities can issue legitimate or licenses perceived to be legitimate to companies, and that in turn could spark further conflict in that region as a whole. That at least is according to a confidential report seen by Reuters and authored by the United Nations Monitoring Group on Eritrea and Somalia. Now, the report notes that while the Somali constitution does give considerable autonomy to regional governments to enter into commercial oil deals, a petroleum law that has not yet been adopted by the country's parliament says the central government can distribute natural resources. Now, the experts group say that these inconsistencies, unless resolved, could lead to increased political conflict between federal and regional governments, and that in turn risk exacerbating clan divisions and thereby threatening peace and security. Now, at the same time, Africa, of course, is the second most populous continent on the planet, only exceeded quite literally by Asia. While some countries here are using their population to drive their growth, others, however, are suffering from negative effects due to the pressure that this high population growth then exerts on public services. As CCTV's Gurum Chalo reports, however, Africa simply has to learn on getting the policy implementation right if it is to harness its greatest resource, its people.
Back in 2009, it was reported that Africa's population had exceeded 1 billion people for the first time, making Africa the second most populous continent on the planet. It is a trend that is expected to continue, with Africa's overall population estimated to more than quadruple in the next 90 years. But is this growth a curse or a blessing for the continent?
In Africa in particular, yes, we have high population growth, but on the other hand, people should not really look at this from a pessimistic view. You see that we need to really manage our population in a good way, meaning that development is for people, and development without people, it is not possible.
At the present, countries like Ethiopia, Nigeria and Egypt are the front runners when it comes to mega population growth. Youth unemployment, informal settlements, pressure on educational and health services are just some of the negative effects of this growth. But it is the so-called youth bulge in Africa that is drawing most attention from policy makers.
In 2063, African youth is expected to double, which means it has lots of potential for the continent, that the youth is very dynamic. So in that regard, the population can be considered as an asset. But at the same time, if we are not controlling population, if we are not creating employment opportunity, it will be a great challenge.
Still, Africa can use its population to its advantage. And the main strategy here, according to experts, is interlinking the growth of the population with the continent's rapid development.
We need population to really grow and to improve the quality of the life of people in Africa. We need population and the demographics of the population in Africa to also manage to effect a development transition in the continent.
According to the UN's report, with many families across the continent having no access to family planning, Africa's population could reach 1.9 billion by 2050. How Africa harnesses this growth will be central to the continent's development over the coming decades. Grumjala, CCTV, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
From the population problem to one of housing, like many cities in Africa, Libreville, Gabon's capital, is experiencing a mushrooming of informal settlements, mainly due to rapid urbanization. About 75% of that country's population of just about 1.5 million people live in cities, with around 40% of those in slums in Libreville with limited public services. Now, Gabon's government announced in 2010 that it would build about 5,000 low-cost houses every year to replace shacks or poorly constructed settlements, but that process is taking longer than expected. Here's CCTV's Maria Galang with the details.
35-year-old Rodrigue Bakula had lived in this two-bedroom house in Akebe Frontier for more than 12 years with his wife and 6 children. Like many who live in this area, which has a population of more than 40,000, Bakula dreams of one day owning a home of his own away from the slum. Bakula says the government's ambitious housing plan is a good one, but that it does not take into account the cost of new homes, which many like him cannot afford.
I know these houses cost more than 15 million francs, yet there are not many who can make 15 million francs or even 2 million francs a month.
The low-cost housing project is based on a campaign promise made by President Ali Bongo when he came to power in 2010 to slowly phase out slums in Libreville by building a minimum of 5,000 houses per year, with an estimated 35,000 houses built by the end of his term in 2016.
You can see for yourself the poor neighborhoods that we live in. This project that the president has introduced is important to us. It's a good project and it will help us to get out of these poor neighborhoods. We have no water. We are suffering here at the Bay of Pigs. Our houses often get flooded.
Critics are skeptical that the government will succeed, with hundreds of houses still under construction 3 years since the inception of the project in 2010. Former Director General of Gabon's National Infrastructure Agency, Henry Hayon, says that the process has taken longer than expected because the government is building the houses according to the smart code model.
Smart code was introduced in the United States over 20 years ago, and in many industrialized countries, it is used as a guideline where every district should be built with certain rules, which allow, for example, that when your children leave the house to take a bus to school, they should not have to walk more than 5 minutes on foot.
According to government figures, Libreville needs around 160,000 houses to meet the city's housing demands. Real estate expert Philippe Chandizon says that the number may be exaggerated and reflecting the housing needs on a national level instead.
There are a little over 1.8 million people in Gabon. Half of them live in Libreville. That makes 800 inhabitants. An average Gabonese family is made up of 5 people. And if we do the math and take 160,000 and multiply by 5, we can house all the residents in Libreville.
He says that the real challenge for the government is funding the project. The government says it is looking into ways to fast-track the construction as it reviews funding options. Maria Galang, CCTV.
Now, before we give you the latest updates on the sports, let's make a quick run through the markets. Lots of green numbers on the board. Some other interesting macro trends, however, emerging away from the equity sides. Nigeria's all-share index up by 4 percentage points, 0.44%. The all-share index in South Africa also in the green, up 0.57%. The 20-share index in Nairobi up about 0.8. The interesting thing to watch out for here is on the currency. The central bank has intervened to support the Kenyan shilling in 2 days so far this week, Monday and Tuesday's trading session. Today might be the same, probably not. We'll give you an update on that at 1700 GMT. And of course, the Egyptian market also up by just over 0.5 percentage point. That's business for you right now.